what any woman wears is a personal statement. But when you're talking about a first lady, it is a personal statement, of course, what she wears, but it's also necessarily at times, maybe all the time, a political statement.
Not necessarily, but we would want to think that, I suppose. They're very careful, they're very subtle, and very intentional in what they wear. So to convey a message by wearing something that they probably wore 20 years before, yet they're still making the same message, would probably be concluded as being something, intentional.
All right, so you say, you contradict me, you say not necessarily making a political statement, but many times they are, correct?
We always look for meaning in what people do. Yes, and that's why some women yes, some women not.
All right.
For instance, Melania Trump. There is a conversation about Mrs. First Lady, Mrs. Trump, in reference to her stiletto high heels, but she also wears white, which we like to put together with the women's temperance movement, with the women's lib movement, with the suffragette movement. So yeah, they will have a very subtle message that will be sent out, and those who notice fashion and understands the industry will pick up on it.
Much more subtle than, say, for example, the President of the United States wearing an American flag on the lapel of his suit. So let's go back in time a little bit and look at Dolly Madison, for example, the First Lady, wife of James Madison. She tried to, back then, elevate the status of the young country at the time by wearing what was called sumptuous clothing. You look at the pictures of Dolly Madison, I don't know if the word sumptuous comes to mind, but back then, that was the adjective to describe it.
I think being in a place that's just starting out, it's a new republic, you want respect, you want to be on an even level with monarchies in Europe, you've got to be out there and wear something that equals the same status as what they would wear. And that's what she was trying to achieve.
And of course, she was in the White House when it burned to the ground during the War of 1812. It was 1814 when the White House burned. And there's a story of legend that she actually rescued some of the curtains from the White House that burned, some
Right.
red velvet or burgundy velvet,
Right.
and crafted some sort of dress out of it.
It was her favorite garment. You can actually see this at the Greensboro Museum in North Carolina. So there's a wonderful legend about it. The Smithsonian did actually some conservation work on the dress, and you can see that it's been preserved, not quite as red as it was, but it's still around.
See, it's an inspiration to all women around the country right now, looking at their drapes and thinking, hey, what can I make of that? Pat Nixon, maybe the most and greatest representative of first ladies in terms of what she was doing with fashion, really her own woman. 1972, she wore that bright red coat to China, not by accident, was it?
No, not by accident. It was well chosen.
And the reason was, well, obviously the colors of the Chinese national flag, but also the color represented certain things of the Chinese people.
Good fortune. Yeah, long lived.
She was noted speaking out as First Lady of dressing for herself privately. You know, she wanted to wear what she wanted. She was her own woman. But she also was acutely aware of dressing for public as well. But she was, at the same time, very, very practical. From my readings, I come to find out that she liked to wear clothing with pockets in it, for example. And so she could tuck things away so she could remember maybe notes to talk to her husband, Richard Nixon, about.
That's right. She favored a lot of her gowns, beautiful, gowns that she wore during head of state dinners, included pockets so that she could put a note in there or a thank you card, whatever a guest would bring, and that she could share with her husband or maybe respond herself the next day when she did her correspondence.
And of course, when you think of first ladies, you think of Jackie Kennedy, right? And I believe her favorite designer was Oleg Cassini. Most notably, obviously, there are thousands and thousands of pictures of the former First Lady, legendary and iconic in what she wore. Do you see and sense a message in what she wore? Or was it strictly fashion style?
Oh, she was stylish from the get-go. Wonderful background. She was well-educated.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.